Thank you, Mr Chair. And I want to talk about the Minister's SOP, and I want to start with new clause 17A, which is for planned activities, not just existing activities. And when the bill was at Select Committee, these are transitional arrangements. So this is recognising that there's already some activity taking place in the exclusive economic zone. Obviously, there needs to be some way of bringing them into this legislation without being too disruptive to those who are already carrying out activities. And when we were discussing the transitional provisions at Select Committee, there were some concerns that we had around those existing activity provisions. We just wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be any gaps that might result in some kind of accident because it fell through a gap that we put in when we put these transitional provisions in place. And we were reassured, I think, by and large. I mean, there were some arguments around some of the time frames and whether it was too short or too long, and industry had one point of view and the environmental organisations had another point of view. But ultimately, I think we got to the point where we thought, OK, well, the provisions for existing activities, probably there aren't too many gaps in those. And the reason that we were convinced of that is because it kept being raised time and time again that this wasn't about stuff that was just planned. This was about stuff that was already happening. So if we were to just shut that down, it would mean actually stopping something that was already happening, as opposed to something where someone had said, well, we are intending to do this, but we haven't started yet. And that was the point that reassured us. So to suddenly see that in this SOP, we're now extending out transitional provisions for planned activities, which we were reassured at Select Committee would not happen, is really concerning. Very, very concerning. And I would like the Minister to take a call on this in all sincerity, because I just want to read out the definition of planned petroleum activity. It says here, means an activity involved with the exploration, prospecting or mining for petroleum if, before the new regulations came into force, A, the exploration, prospecting or mining for petroleum with which the activity is involved is authorised by a permit, basically under the Crown Minerals Act, and B, that the activity has not commenced. And what I would like to know from the Minister is what this means for the permit that's been issued on the east coast of the North Island to Petrobras. Because at the moment they've carried out seismic surveying, so that would be considered an existing activity, and there are clauses to deal with that, and that's all fine and good. They haven't yet done any drilling. And I want to know whether this transitional provision means that because they've been given a permit by the under the Crown Minerals Act, because that activity hasn't yet continued, are they going to be able to go out and drill in the Rokumura Basin, which is 3,000 to 4,000 metres deep, without having to get a marine consent and without having to go through a full process which involves public consultation and the ability for the community that I live in on the East Coast to have a say? And maybe I've got that wrong, but my reading of the bill is that could be how this is interpreted. And I'd really like the Minister to reassure me that this isn't saying that just because something was planned, someone's been given a permit, that they now are basically exempt and will not have to go through the processes that we're setting out in this piece of legislation. That they will not have to go through those processes because it was a planned activity. Now, that's very different from an existing activity where someone's already doing something. It would be unreasonable to say you now have to stop and go through all these processes because they've made investments, and that's absolutely fine and good. But where they haven't started that activity, where the structures are not currently in place, they should have to go through the full processes in this piece of legislation. And I would like some clarity from the Minister around that, because obviously that's going to be very concerning as we have the government going out and issuing more and more permits under the Crown Minerals Act. Before this legislation has gone through Parliament, before the regulations have been finalised, they're out there issuing permits. That now suddenly carries much greater legal weight with this clause in the Minister's SOP. Because under the bill as it came back from Select Committee, that didn't mean that just because they had the permit they were going to be able to avoid the processes in this bill. They'd still have to go through them because they weren't already doing that activity. This now says, or suggests to me, that they don't have to go through those processes, that they could just go out there and drill in the Rokumura Basin without going through a process which ensures that environmental protection is considered before they start carrying out those processes. So I would like the Minister to respond to that. And then the issue of Clause 17 and replacing Clause 17.3 and introducing a major loophole is also an issue, I think, and maybe even if there was a time frame that was inserted within that clause, and the Minister says there is, and I will sit down now and let her take a call so she can perhaps clarify that.
Sure, I'm happy to take a call and clarify.
Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr Chair.
Yes,
thank you, Mr Chair. Look, I'm happy to take a call and clarify that matter, and I've just double-checked it between Mr Robertson's first contribution on that. The way that the wording of Section 17 works